This happened last month at my wedding. It was a charming countryside venue. I thought I was doing well with my new family, but I was still getting used to the dynamics. At the reception, my sister-in-law, Julie, suddenly shouted something about our family's dark past. Everyone laughed, but it struck me as odd. I thought maybe she was just drunk. I tried to brush it off, yet it lingered in my mind. I couldn't shake off that feeling. After the wedding, I asked family members about what Julie meant. I got nervous laughs and a lot of dodging. The more I pressed, the more fragmented the stories became. I felt like I was digging into a mystery that nobody wanted solved. The whispers around the family gatherings turned my stomach. Even my husband shrugged when I asked. It felt unsettling. Things around the house started to shift, too. One day, a picture fell from the wall without cause. It smashed on the floor, and I jumped. I didn't feel safe in my own home. Every time I walked into a room, I felt something watching me. The cold crept in whenever I thought about Julie's odd comment. Each family gathering made my heart race. I caught Julie staring at me like she knew something I didn't. One night, my husband went out for errands, leaving me alone. I sat on the couch, flipping through wedding photos, when I heard a loud thud from upstairs. My heart raced. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. The dread grew heavy in my chest. I didn't want to investigate, but I felt pulled to do it. As I climbed the stairs, the air was thick. The hallway was dark. I opened the door to the spare room, where we kept wedding decorations. I stepped inside, feeling the door creak shut behind me. I suddenly felt trapped. I looked around, but it was empty. Then I heard it. A whisper, almost like it was right behind me. I turned quickly, my heart pounding. Then I froze. There was Julie, standing in the doorway with a blank expression. My breath hitched. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But instead she said, "You don't know, do you?" Then she vanished, leaving me in a cold, empty room. I was paralyzed by her words. What did she mean? I could feel the darkness swirling around me. I needed answers. I needed to know what secret had become my wedding present. That night, my thoughts circled like vultures. I felt the weight of something terrible lurking just beyond my reach. My wedding day should have been happy. But instead, it felt like it opened a door I had no idea existed. Questions tugged at my mind as I tried to piece everything together. But the pieces didn't fit. I had to dig deeper. I just didn't know how far I was willing to go. I was scared, but I had to find out what I had stumbled into. The next day I woke up with a pit in my stomach. I kept replaying Julie's haunting words in my mind. "You don't know, do you?" What did she mean? I couldn't shake the feeling that there were layers to my new family that I hadn't seen. I jumped up and decided to visit the local library. I recalled an old family story about a tragic accident that had happened years ago. Maybe I could find something there. I grabbed my purse and headed out, needing some kind of clarity. The library was quiet, almost too quiet. I wandered through the stacks, looking for anything about my husband's family. Soon I found a local history book tucked away on a low shelf. There were details about the town's past, and as I flipped through the pages, I came across an article titled "The McAllister Tragedy." My heart raced. The article detailed a fire that had consumed a family farm decades ago. There were mentions of bitter feuds and strange disappearances that surrounded the incident. The more I read, the more I felt like I stumbled onto a dark saga buried under layers of silence. It terrified me, yet fascinated me at the same time. Just then, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to find a librarian staring at me, her brow furrowed. "You shouldn't be looking into that," she said softly. "It's better left alone." Her directness sent shivers down my spine. Why? I pressed, my voice catching. There are reasons families avoid their pasts, she replied, her eyes narrowing. Trust me. Then she walked away, leaving me feeling exposed. Why would she warn me? What did she know? I decided to confront my husband about the article when I got home. I needed him to tell me the truth. When I walked through the door, he was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. His face was relaxed, but I could see a flicker of concern when I mentioned going to the library. "Oh, that again?" he said, avoiding my gaze. "I thought we agreed to let sleeping dogs lie." My heart dropped. I felt the urgency to know more, but his tone held a warning. "Is there something you're not telling me?" I asked, desperate. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's just... some things are better not spoken about. Families have their secrets, and sometimes they only hurt." Frustrated, I stormed into our bedroom. My mind raced, piecing together what I'd learned. I couldn't just drop it. I had to get to the bottom of this, no matter the cost. That night, in a fit of curiosity and dread, I crawled out of bed long after my husband had fallen asleep. I needed to explore the attic. It was a place I had never dared venture before, and I felt a magnetic pull to it. I tiptoed upstairs, heart pounding. The stairs creaked under my weight. When I reached the attic door, it felt heavy against my palm. I hesitated, but I pushed it open. The darkness loomed before me, filled with old boxes and rusted memories. Then everything went dark. The attic light flickered out, leaving me in pitch blackness. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. That's when I heard it. A whisper, cold and familiar. "You don't know, do you?" My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't alone. My heart raced as I strained to hear through the darkness. The whisper had been unmistakable, yet the attic was empty. Or so I thought. I stepped back, arms crossed tight over my chest, fighting the urge to bolt out of there. Then I felt it. A chill in the air, like a gust had swept through. I thought of the librarian's warning. Why didn't I just leave the past alone? Just as I was about to turn and flee, my foot brushed against something. I crouched down to feel around, heart hammering. My fingers grazed a hard object. I pulled it into the dim light from the hallway. It was a small weathered box, locked tight. My first instinct was to leave it alone, but a voice echoed in my mind. "You don't know, do you?" The urge to discover the truth consumed me. I searched the attic for a tool to pry it open, my fingers trembling. I finally found an old screwdriver in another box. It felt wrong, invasive, but I couldn't turn back. With shaky hands, I inserted the tip into the lock and twisted it. A soft click echoed in the silence. As I opened the box, I was met with a stack of faded photographs and letters. Faces stared back at me. Some familiar, some strange. I recognized my husband in a couple of them, but the older man next to him was someone I didn't know. My heart raced. Could he be connected to the tragedies? Among the letters was one that caught my eye. The handwriting was elegant, almost flowing. I breathed in deeply and unfolded it. The opening line chilled me. "Dearest Margaret, the fire was not an accident." I froze. Who was Margaret? As I read more, it became clear that this letter was penned by a woman who lived through the tragedy. She spoke of secrets, betrayal, and rumors that plagued the family after the fire. The words blurred as a noise jolted me from my focus. Footsteps sounded from below. My pulse quickened. I glanced at the attic door. The shadows creeping across the room felt alive. I quickly shoved the letter and photos back into the box, locking it again before slipping it back to its corner. I still could not breathe normally, the air thick with a sense of doom. I moved quietly, hoping to slip out unnoticed. Just then, I heard a voice. It was my husband. "What are you doing up there?" he called, his tone sharp. Panic gripped me. I didn't want him to find me digging into things he wanted kept buried. I took a deep breath and replied, "Just checking the light." I crept to the door, careful to avoid making sound. But just as I reached for the knob, a sudden realization hit me, one that sent chills down my spine. Someone knew I was up there. Before I could react, the attic door swung open with a groan. My husband stood there, his expression unreadable. "You should have stayed away," he said, his voice low. My gut twisted as fear washed over me. I was in deeper than I had ever intended, and there was no turning back now. I took a step back, heart racing. My husband's eyes were steely, a storm brewing behind them. I tried to steady my voice, but it came out shaky. I was just looking for something." He took a slow step into the attic, and I could feel the space closing in around me. "You really shouldn't have come up here," he said, his words clipped. "You have no idea what you're meddling with." I swallowed hard, panic flaring. "What do you mean? Is it about the fire? Why do you care so much about keeping all of this a secret?" His brow furrowed. "Because it's not just history. It's dangerous." Before I could respond, he reached behind him, grabbing another flashlight from the hall. The beam swept over the boxes, illuminating the dust motes, swirling through the stale air. I squinted, trying to avoid the spotlight. "Put that down," I blurted out, instinctively moving closer. "You're going to draw attention." "Attention? You think anyone else cares? This is just our family's mess," he snapped, anger slicing through the fear. "You don't get to play detective." Something shifted in the atmosphere, like a breath held too long. My words fell uneasily between us. "I know something happened. I found letters, and there's someone you haven't told me about in those photos." "Who is that man?" His expression changed, just for a moment. A flicker of something vulnerable before it hardened again. "You don't want to know. Trust me." "I need to know," I insisted. "What if Margaret was trying to tell you something? What if there's more to the story?" He stepped closer, and I could see the tension coiling beneath his skin. "You need to stop this. Whatever it was, whatever you found. It's not worth it. Some things are better left alone." A chilling breeze swept through the attic, and I shivered. I didn't understand why he was being so protective. What was truly at stake? "Stop being so cryptic. Just tell me the truth." Just as he opened his mouth to respond, a sudden crash echoed from downstairs. Our heads snapped toward the sound, hearts hammering together in sync. "What was that?" I whispered, barely able to voice my fear. He cursed under his breath, taking a step back. "It's nothing. Just the wind." Another crash drowned out his words, followed by a guttural sound that sent shockwaves through me. This time, it wasn't the wind. Something was in the house. Panic surged through my chest, and I instinctively grabbed the box I'd uncovered earlier. It felt like my only chance. "We need to get out of here," I said urgently, my mind racing. But he shook his head. "You can't take that. We need to go now." Before I could reply, the attic door slammed shut, plunging us into darkness. I wanted answers. I thought frantically. But with the door closed and something lurking downstairs, all I had now was dread. Then everything went dark. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in the silence that followed the crash. My husband's flashlight flickered in the dimness of the attic, casting shadows that danced across the wooden beams and piles of forgotten boxes. The sounds from below filled the space with a palpable tension. "Do you think it's an animal?" I whispered, my voice trembling. I wanted to believe that was all it was, but deep down, I knew better. My husband remained still, his body coiled like a spring, ready to react. "We can't stick around to find out," he said, his voice low and urgent. He pressed against the door, but it didn't budge. "Why won't it open?" I pressed, panic taking hold. He forced a breath. "It must be stuck. Help me." We both pushed against the door, but it felt as solid as a wall. Sounds from below morphed into chaos. Furniture scraping, something heavy being dragged across the floor, a deep growl that chilled me to the core. "Maybe we can break it down," I suggested, desperation fueling my thoughts. "No!" he hissed, his eyes wide. "If we make too much noise, we'll attract whatever's down there." The desperation clouding my mind began to clear as I forced myself to focus. What if we look for another way out? I scanned the cramped attic, my gaze landing on a slanted window at the far end. That might work. He shook his head. "There's no time for that. We have to get this door open." Another loud crash shattered the air, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. My breath came faster, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. "We can't just wait here. You don't understand what's really happening." He hesitated, the moment stretching between us like an unbreakable thread. "You think you want to know? You don't. Whatever I'm trying to protect you from, it's worse than you can imagine," he pleaded, his voice thick with emotion. I felt the knot of fear tighten in my stomach. "But I have to try. How can I trust you if you won't tell me?" His expression shifted. It was angry, hurt, and something else I couldn't quite place. "You'll never understand. It's not just about us. It's about..." A deafening crash shattered his words, and the quilt of dread I'd felt unraveled. I rushed towards the window, reaching to unlatch it, my fingers fumbling. I felt him close behind me. "Let's just go," I urged, desperation rising. Before I could turn the latch, the door burst open. In the doorway stood a figure outlined by the light from the hallway. It was someone I recognized, though the circumstances couldn't have been more shocking. "Help me!" they screamed, eyes wide with terror. I was frozen, my mind racing. What was happening? And why was this person here? I glanced back at my husband, whose face was as pale as the walls. "What? Who is that?" And then I realized, whatever danger lurked in our house just got a lot more complicated. The figure in the doorway stepped forward, the glow from the hallway revealing a familiar face, but the fear in her eyes twisted my stomach. It was my sister-in-law, Lydia. "What are you doing here?" I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "Please, you have to help me," she pleaded, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Her long brown hair was disheveled, and her clothes were torn. "They're coming for me." I froze. "Who's coming?" "Your husband," she gasped, her gaze cutting sharply to him. "He's not who you think he is." "What?" My heart plummeted. I looked at my husband, whose expression had transformed from surprise to something akin to fury. "Lydia, stop!" he barked, stepping toward her. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do know," she retorted. "I've seen things. Things you wouldn't believe. There's no time. We have to go." I stood torn between the two of them. The earlier chaos below us still echoed in my head, and now this new revelation tossed me into confusion. "What did you see? What do you mean?" I asked. "I can't explain now, just trust me." She took another step forward, eyes darting nervously toward the hall, as if expecting someone or something to appear. "Trust you?" My husband's voice cracked, anger simmering beneath the surface. "You're the reason we're even in this mess." Lydia flinched at the accusation, fear flashing across her face. "No, I'm trying to save you, save us all. You have to believe me." Before we could respond, a thud reverberated from the bottom of the stairs, and the house trembled as if something massive was forcing its way up. "Go back," I urged. "There's no way we can stay here." Lydia's eyes widened further. "We can't leave this way. They'll catch us." "Who will catch us?" I felt frustration spill into my voice. "You're not making any sense." The monstrous noise below grew louder, a deep, guttural sound that reverberated through the walls. A dark shape loomed at the bottom of the stairs, a mass of shadows twisting as if the very darkness itself had come alive. Lydia grabbed my arm. "Please, follow me," she screamed, pulling me toward the far end of the attic. My husband hesitated, his hands clenched into fists, indecision wrinkling his brow. "Don't trust her," he shouted. "She's playing with your mind." I could feel time standing still, the decision weighing heavily on my heart. I glanced between Lydia, whose fear was palpable, and my husband, whom I had always believed was my protector. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move in the shadows below. A pair of glowing eyes locked onto us. "Now!" Lydia yelled. And in that moment, primal instinct kicked in. I followed her without thought, racing toward the opposite end of the attic. But as we reached the window, a scream pierced the air. It was my husband's voice, calling my name, filled with pure terror. I turned back just in time to see the monstrous shape uncurl as it stepped into the light. My heart dropped. What was it? And how were we ever going to escape now? I didn't have time to think. My feet moved instinctively as I followed Lydia, heart pounding in my throat. The window loomed ahead, but the sound of my husband's scream echoed again, raw and desperate, more terrifying than anything else in that moment. "Wait!" I called out, panic slipping into my voice. I glanced back at him, searching for any sign of hope, but only saw terror etched into his features. The shape in the shadows unfurled like a dark, shrouded beast. It loomed larger, an evil silhouette blocked against the dim light of the attic. "Please," Lydia begged, gripping my arm tight. "We have to go." The urge to help my husband clashed with the instinct for self-preservation. I was being pulled in two directions, as if tattered by a violent storm. I turned my head to watch him, and in that split second, the monstrous figure lunged forward. "Don't you dare!" he screamed, fighting something unseen behind him, eyes wild with fear. I could feel a terrible energy radiating from the dark shape, like a hungry predator closing in on prey. "Now!" Lydia insisted again, a forceful tug on my arm driving me towards the window. The last glimpse of my husband showed his face distorted in despair, the reality of whatever was happening settling on us like a lead-weighted blanket. Guilt crashed over me as I fought against it, but it paled against the instinct to survive. In a frenzied motion, I pushed the window open and leaned out into the night. Below, a glint of moonlight caught the sharp edges of the metal fence separating our house from the forest beyond. "Climb out. We can make it," Lydia urged, glancing back nervously. And then I heard it. A soft, low growl that seemed to punctuate the air with a chilling finality. My skin crawled. "Lydia, what is that thing?" I asked, my voice shaking. She had been the first to utter the truth, but I was only starting to grasp the depth of it. "The manifestation of his lies," she whispered urgently. "We can't waste any more time. It feeds on fear. If it catches you, it's over." But before I could respond, the creature surged up the stairs, the ground beneath us trembling. I clung to the window frame, torn between escaping with Lydia and confronting my husband one last time. This was madness. I had to know what I was dealing with. In that moment of indecision, I saw the creature's eyes, glowing like fireflies in the dark. And suddenly, I remembered my husband's words from our wedding day. How much he loved me. How he would do anything to protect me. Please, just trust me. He had said then, looking at me as if I were the only thing in the universe that mattered. Now, instead of love, all I saw was anguish. "I need to go back," I shouted, but Lydia's face twisted with fear. "No, you have to trust me. We can't let it come up here." But the impossible weight of my heart, torn between loyalty and dread, demanded an answer. I closed my eyes for a fleeting second, and that's when I felt it. A cold wind swirled through the attic, snaking past me, and my heart raced. Then everything went dark. The last thing I heard was Lydia's scream as I was pulled backward into shadows. I woke up on the floor. My head throbbed and my body felt heavy, as if I were lying beneath a thick quilt. Distant noises surrounded me, echoes of shouts mixed with something darker, a low rumble that crawled into my mind like a nightmare. I blinked slowly, trying to gather my thoughts. The attic loomed around me, shadowy corners slipping in and out of focus. Where was Lydia? Where was my husband? My heart sank as I struggled to sit up, and a wave of dizziness washed over me. "Lydia?" I called, my voice weak. No answer. Just silence broken by that growl, a sound that made my stomach turn. Panic squeezed my throat. I pushed myself off the floor and steadied my breathing. I had to find her. I had to see if he was okay. I stumbled to my feet, my legs trembling. The window I'd clung to earlier was still open, the chill hanging in the air. I looked back at the stairs leading down, the shadows waiting like hungry mouths. With a deep breath, I inched toward the staircase. I had to know what was happening. As I took the first step, I felt the floor beneath me vibrate. The growl grew louder, closer. It was no longer just a sound. It was a tangible force filling the space, creeping into my bones. "Lydia!" I shouted again, more urgently this time. I reached the landing, paused, and peered down into the darkness below. But all I saw were the flickers of shadows moving, twisting, as if alive. Whatever was in my house, it was not done with us. The air felt thick, like a hand wrapping around my chest, squeezing tighter. "Please, just let her be alive," I whispered to myself, the desperation clawing at my resolve. Gripping the rail, I continued down, each step echoing loudly in the oppressive silence. I had no idea what awaited me, but there was a flicker of movement ahead. I froze. For a heartbeat, the shape was indistinct, backlit by an unseen light. I forced myself to breathe through the tightness in my throat. I took another step, somehow entranced by the creature's aura of menace. And then I saw it, a figure cloaked in dark tendrils, massive and shapeless, lifting its head as I approached. Those glowing eyes locked with mine, and a rush of terror shot through me. Memories flooded my mind, each moment where my husband had promised to protect me, and how I'd held on to him through our wedding vows. But like everything that night, the image twisted. The love dissolved into betrayal, making way for a cold, unyielding reality. The growl morphed into a mocking laugh, echoing my fears back at me. "Your loyalty is misplaced," it hissed, a voice that tore through the air like jagged glass. "He lies, and the truth feeds me." I staggered back, my pulse racing as I realized. This was not just a creature. This was a reflection of my husband's darkest truths. Would it consume me too? Then I heard a cry from the window, a voice piercing through the heaviness. It was Lydia. "Help me! It's coming!" I spun back towards the stairs, adrenaline pulsing through me. There was only one thing I could do. I needed to save her, but how? The creature's laughter echoed in my head and I knew time was running out. I bolted down the stairs, fighting the urge to glance back at the creature. I couldn't let fear hold me captive. My focus was on Lydia. I reached the ground floor, heart hammering in my chest. The house felt different now, alive and hostile. The air was charged, electric. "Lydia!" I shouted again, pushing towards the room where I last saw her. Each step was painful, as if the very floor was trying to pull me under. The growl throbbed around me, taunting, growing with every breath I took. The living room was dim, shadows stretching across the walls like dark fingers. I glanced towards the window, where I hoped Lydia was still hanging on. As I neared, I could see her struggling, her small frame fighting against something I couldn't see. "Lydia, I'm coming!" I yelled and dashed towards the door. The sound of her voice, filled with terror, drove me forward. But as I grabbed the doorknob, a sharp pain shot through my hand. I pulled back, gasping. Blood trickled from where I had gripped it too hard. That's when I noticed the door was warped. The wood twisted and contorted as if something terrible had clawed at it from the other side. Desperation clawed at me, but I couldn't give in. I looked back at the room, hoping for a weapon, anything to help. That's when I noticed my husband's hunting knife on the mantel, glinting under the light. I sprinted for it, feeling the creature's presence looming over me, close, watchful. I grabbed the knife, feeling its weight in my hand. A burst of determination surged through me. If I was going to fight whatever was in this house, I'd need every ounce of strength. The growl intensified, shaking the very bones of the house. Without thinking, I swung the knife at the door, feeling the blade connect. It didn't break through but left a deep gash. I tried again, harder this time, adrenaline sparking a fierce resolve. The door shuddered but held firm. "Lydia!" I screamed, my voice rising above the growling chaos. She was still calling for help. I couldn't let this thing silence her. Suddenly the lights flickered and plunged the room into near darkness. I pressed my back against the wall and took a breath. The knife felt heavy in my grip. "What are you waiting for?" I muttered to myself. The room was filled with oppressive air, thick with dread. "You need to be brave." Then I rushed at the door, my shoulder crashing against it. It groaned loudly, but the wood splintered. That tiny crack unveiled darkness, and I could almost hear the whispers. But it wasn't just the growl anymore. Other sounds rose, a chorus of voices chanting something I couldn't understand. My heart raced as a chill wrapped around me. Then everything went dark. The thrust I had made into the door created a space just wide enough to see something moving. Panic washed over me as I caught the glint of eyes staring back. Numerous eyes, glowing and hungry. I stumbled back, breath hitching. I had unleashed something more than I ever imagined. Something was waiting to break free, and I realized that escaping the creature wasn't my only challenge. It was time to confront the nightmares. I had to find Lydia, but as I gathered the strength to push through, I felt a tug at my shirt. Something was climbing from the shadows, pulling back my resolve. "Help me." The voice sounded familiar, yet twisted. That's when I knew. I had to choose. Face the darkness, or let it consume us all. The room was filled with an unsettling stillness as I steadied myself against the wall, knife gripped tightly in my shaking hand. I could still hear Lydia's shrill cries for help, each plea a harsh reminder of the urgency of our situation. It was now or never. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged for the door once more. The knife dug deeper, creating splinters that sent a jolt of hope through me. I had no choice but to fight through this. "Lydia! Hold on!" I shouted, focusing on her voice as the drive for survival overtook me. The growling intensified, vibrating my bones and filling my ears until I could feel it within me. I slammed my shoulder against the door again, and this time, it cracked open, revealing the darkened hall. I could hear the whispers, muffled voices drifting from the depths, each one pulling at my mind, inviting me to listen, to surrender. I shook off the sensation. I wasn't going to let whatever this was gain control of me. I flung the door open and charged down the stairs. The creature's growls echoed behind me, clawing at the air, yet I pressed on. A flicker of movement caught my eye. It was my husband, standing frozen outside the living room. His gaze anchored on something I couldn't see, yet my heart raced at his presence. "What are you doing?" I shouted at him, desperation gnawing at my words. He turned to me, eyes wide, fear rippling across his face. "You shouldn't be here," he breathed, and for a moment, the shadows of doubt clouded my mind. But I couldn't pause now. "Where's Lydia? We have to get her out." He shook his head emphatically, stepping closer. "It's too dangerous. I can't let you—" "I can't." I pushed past him. "Then move or get out of my way," I demanded, my heart pounding with each step. I felt the darkness behind me, alive and angry. It wanted to consume everything, and I wouldn't be its next meal. I raced into the living room, scanning for any sign of her. That's when I saw Lydia, still by the window, struggling as shadows crawled up her legs. She was fighting, but the darkness was winning. "Lydia, hold on!" I cried, launching myself toward her. In one swift motion I grabbed her arm, tugging her back. She gasped as she broke free from the creeping shadows just in time. My grip was solid, and I held her tight. "We have to go now." But the room trembled. The creature surged near, a brooding threat, its shape distorting into monstrous proportions as it rose behind my husband. I turned just in time to see him collapse, eyes wide as the shadows consumed him. "No!" I screamed, feeling the weight of betrayal crash upon me. He couldn't just be gone. Not like this. He hadn't told me everything, but I'd loved him without question. "Let's go," Lydia cried, pulling me back. I tore my eyes away from the horror that was engulfing my husband, the echoes of taunts crashing in my ears. "We can't save him. We have to leave." But where to? The darkness pressed in, and the creature's growl rumbled through me once more. I felt the urge to flee, but I couldn't shake the horror of what I had just witnessed. Then, just as the shadows reached their climax, I saw it. A glimmer of light breaking through the darkness that had become our prison. It filled me with a flicker of hope. "Through the back door! We can escape!" I shouted, grabbing Lydia and pulling her toward the entrance. We ran, the air turning frigid as the whispers turned into shrieks behind us. The door held fast, a barricade against whatever lay within those treacherous depths. My heart pounded like a war drum as I led Lydia through. We had no choice. "I can't believe we might make it," Lydia gasped, adrenaline coursing through her. Yet as we smashed through the back door, another crash resonated behind us, sending shards of fear bolting through my chest. Outside, the night was a shroud of darkness filled with the distant wails of secrets and pain, the echoes of a past we couldn't outrun. The forest loomed before us. The trees stood guard like ancient sentinels, beckoning us forth. As we stumbled into the woods, the sounds of the creature faded behind us. I turned back, the shadows swallowing our home, and I felt a pang of sorrow. But I couldn't dwell there. The truth haunted me. Did I truly leave my husband behind? Had I made the right choice? And what had really been tormenting us? It felt so surreal. But one thing remained clear. Our escape did little to erase the questions lurking in the back of my mind. Next of kin? Or something darker? I didn't have the answers. Eventually we found an old dirt road, and I turned to Lydia, her face stained with fear and blood. "Are you okay?" I think so, she replied shakily, glancing back once more. But we need to keep moving. The past doesn't just let go. I nodded, foreboding thoughts swirling within me. As we walked further into the forest, I realized this confrontation had only scratched the surface of something far deeper than I could understand. I moved to a different city shortly after. Sometimes, as I lay awake at night, I wonder if they ever found their way out. Would I ever have the courage to return? To search for the missing pieces of that dark legacy? Whatever darkness followed me in those shadows, I knew it wouldn't stay quiet forever. And it was only just beginning.